What's up, everybody? I'm Dan, Binder Boneyard. Today we're going to talk about inexperienced shops and or inattentive technicians that can wreak havoc on old parts that are very hard to get. We are working on a 67 International Scout 800, and the customer was complaining of rear end noise after a brake job. The customer stated that every time they went around a corner, they would hear a grinding noise or a growl, and could not figure out what the problem was, and nobody could diagnose the problem. This particular Scout has the two-piece axle set up that they all had pre-69, and it takes a special bearing, and it also has a power lock in the differential, so it's not an open carrier, it's a power lock. In our parts manual, you can see the exploded power lock. You can see there's these pins, and they're held together with a roll pin. That's what we fished out of one of the axle tubes. So you can see the wear on the axle shaft where it had been rubbing on this piece. And so we believe that that piece fell out and then it let the shaft move in and out. So the point of those little thrust blocks is to correctly set the end play of the axle shaft, because those tapered axle bearings, they need something to ride against, and so that those thrust pieces are what keep it intact. Without one of them in there, then the axle shaft could walk back and forth, and that's what we saw there. Those pins don't normally break because they'd have to come out through the splines. See, it was in the tube, so there's no way that piece could have made it out the splines through the spider gear and out into the tube and look like that, to only be broken half. So what happened, we think, is that the last time the axle shaft was pulled, it came out, stuck to the end of the shaft, came out a little bit, and then when the person reinstalled the shaft, it went right over the top of it and into the splines, and the installer didn't even know what had happened. And then with the growling bearing, then you just assume that there's something wrong with the bearing, but what it actually happened was the shaft moving around, it chewed into the housing, ruined the bearing. So yeah, and no one would have known that. No one would have thought to look at that if they hadn't experienced that before. And I had. I learned that about 20 years ago on a Scout that I was working on. Learned it from an old timer that there is a thrust block in there, and it's important. So when the guys were putting it back together and had an issue with the shafts not seeming to seat right, I knew right away what was wrong with it. So it's real important to just always pay attention, make sure you know what's going on, get the parts manual if you're doing the work yourself. Definitely have the repair manual. Those are very, very helpful resources to have when you're working on these things, because you might not know what you don't know. So but anyways, that's what we found, and hopefully that saved you guys from some headaches yourself. So till next time, I'm Dan, Binder Boneyard.